Hey, it's me, TB, and today I'm going to be doing my intro clip for this reading vlog. Basically, I wanted to do a vlog series where I read classics from like non-white people basically, and so this is going to be like the first in that series. And I think that mostly this year's set of vlogs will be mostly focused on Americans, or like on people that would group under the umbrella of Americans, if that makes sense. So this first vlog is going to be about Black classics, and I have stuff from the 19th century and then the early 20th century. So I'll just go through the ones I'm reading for this vlog, and I will give you my thoughts on one of them because I have already started reading it. So up first is the Bondwoman's Narrative by Hannah Crafts. This was like, I think, rediscovered in like 2003, I think, because Henry Louis Gates Jr., I forget how he found it, but he found it and he basically like did a little bit of editing for it, and then he put it out to be published. And this is like, I think, the only novel published by a fugitive enslaved person. And this is a fiction novel that Hannah Crafts wrote that is like part fiction and part autobiography a little bit, because there are parts that are more fictional than there are parts that we know now are more autobiographical. So basically, it's following the main character, who's also named Hannah, as she's basically trying to go to freedom, basically. There is like more to it, but I feel like it's better if you go in like not knowing like some of the twists, I guess. And since I've already like started reading it, I'll give like some like my starter thoughts on it, I guess. There are notes in the back of the book, kind of like end notes, I guess you would call them, or footnotes, whatever. It kind of give you more like clarification on like certain things. So like some of the earlier like footnotes talk about how this book was inspired by Gothic fiction as well as sentimental novels, and you can kind of tell that through some of the writing choices that Hannah Crafts makes while writing. And I will say that the early chapters lean very heavily on the like Gothic elements, but where I'm at right now, I think they've kind of like petered out, so I don't know if they're gonna like come back later or not. So I guess we will find out. So far, I am really liking it. So yeah, those are my thoughts, I guess. And this was like, we don't know like specifically when this was written, but we know it's written between like 1853 and like 1861. So I'm going with the early state because these are in chronological order. Then I have this bind up, and the first book is Clotel by William Wells Brown. This is also written by a fugitive enslaved person, and this is following the ordeals by a mixed race woman who is purported to be the daughter of Thomas Jefferson. This, like everything else I have, is fictional, I think, besides one other thing. So just fair warning, I guess. And next, in chronological order, we have Behind the Scenes by Elizabeth Hobbs Keckley. And this is the other like nonfiction thing I have on this list. This is a memoir, I guess you would call it. And the author herself was enslaved for 30 years. And then she, I think, bought her freedom. And then she opened up a dress boutique in Washington, D.C. And from there on, she became connected with the Lincolns when they were in the White House. And she became a very close friend, First Lady Mary Lincoln. So I thought that was very, very interesting. I'm just interested in seeing like her thoughts while in the White House. And this was written in 1868, or it was like published then. And then I have Iola Leroy by Frances E.W. Harper, and this is published in 1892. And that is following a light-skinned Black woman who is tricked into slavery after being raised to think that she is a free white. But that is all that's on the back. So there's not like much more I can like give you, I guess. And for now, that's all I'm gonna talk about, because I want to like do a different like intro clip for when I move into the 20th century. So there's the books that I'm reading for this like 19th century portion. I will update you as I continue. My usual fair warning, I don't do a lot of like fancy shit with my vlogs. It's just like me giving you my thoughts. So go in expecting that, you know? So I have finished the first book for this reading vlog, and it only took me like a week. So great signs. But also I wasn't reading for like 3 days, so that probably didn't help anything. So my final thoughts for this are that I think I'm going to give it 5 stars. I will say that towards the end, the plot kind of got out of control, I guess. And I don't know if I said this before in my little intro clip. The version that we are reading is still the one that the author was editing. So it's not like done. So I can't really like be too critical about that, you know, because this version was never like intended to be read. So I can't really be like too strict about it not being like perfect, you know. But I did like a lot of the elements in this, and I felt that the choice to kind of use both Gothic and sentimental like genre tropes, I guess, to tell the story was a very like smart choice. Towards the back of the book, Henry Louis Gates Jr. does like textual annotations where like he like explains choices and like tropes or whatever, as well as like some of like the Bible quotes in this. and it kind of explains like where certain parts came from, because the author did have access to a library in one of her master's homes. So that's where she got a lot of her like reading and like inspiration, we guess, because I think there's like a paragraph or two that is taken from Bleak House by Charles Dickens. So that was pretty cool. Though, not gonna lie, I do wish that it leaned more into like the gothic tropes, because the gothic vibes kind of like vanished around the halfway point. But still, overall, I did really like it. Do I recommend this to everyone? No, because I know that it isn't done and people aren't gonna like the fact that it isn't like, I guess like fully edited, I guess, because you can tell that it's not like done, but I still liked it for what we do have, and that I can see how this would like become a great novel or an even better novel if it was actually like edited and like finalized by the author. Since it is not, we can't really be too critical about that, because like, well, it's not done, you know? So yes, I really liked this. So yes, this was a great start. I don't have much else to say really. Besides, I also like that because this is not done. We also saw like some of the like marks where the author marked out the words to like restart her sentences. And I like that because it made me feel like more like better about being a writer myself, because, you know, like we really only ever get a chance to read like finalized copies whenever like stuff that is in progress. So I like seeing like another like writer struggling with finding the correct words, like the correct sentence starter, I guess. On to the next one, you know. Since I just finished the bondwoman's narrative, I've just started Clotel, and I wanted to kind of just give my like first thoughts, I guess. So I read the introduction to this. I didn't read the full thing because it goes into like the author's lives, and like I didn't want to get spoiled if like they talk about, or like the editor talks about like spoilers, you know, because they do that a lot with the classics. They kind of just like spoil the whole thing. I am liking Clotel, but I am just confused because like it is fiction, but then there are parts that talk about like newspapers and stuff where I'm like, okay, but are like the newspaper like quotes also fiction, or are they like real stuff that you're using to like emphasize the points you're making in the fiction parts, you know? And so that's like confusing me right now. I'm only on chapter like 6, which is like maybe page like 20 or 40 in like the whole book, so I'm not that far in. But so far we are also focusing on Clotel's like sister and her mother and what they're off doing, because they were separated, because they were all sold. Clotel was bought by this guy that was trying to like woo her, I guess, because her whole family has very light skin, so they were able to like, so like her mother like was allowed like more freedom, I guess, and she like was able to get like a job outside of like just being enslaved and working alongside her master, and was allowed to like raise her daughters so they could be ladies too. And I guess Clotel was basically just like given as a mistress, or she was bought to be a mistress. I don't think that's gonna last, because where just stopped her like husband, I guess you would call him, even though like they legally aren't, but they did get like a ceremony done. He is trying to become a politician, and he's basically trying to marry this guy's daughter so he can be like in with this rich guy, you know? So probably going to end up ditching Clotel, which sucks. But we're also getting updates on what's going on with her sister and her mother, or at least we are like so far. Don't know if that's gonna like keep going or not, but yes, I am curious to see where this is gonna go. I am already assuming sad times abound, because I have a feeling that Clotel is gonna be like sent away or like sold again, or she's going to try and escape. So yes, I have a feeling that I kind of know what's gonna happen to her sister too, but I don't want to spoil what happens with that. So yeah, I'll update you when I read more, I guess. And yeah, so I have finished Clotel. I finished it last night, I think, and I just never got around to filming my like responses to it, I guess. As of right now, I'm thinking it is sitting at like a 4.5. I don't know whether to like round that up or not, because part of me wants to, but I also read some like reviews for this book to just like see like what people were complaining about, I guess. I think that a lot of their critiques are like valid, I guess. So later on throughout the book, we still get like snippets of like newspapers and stuff. So it turns out that, like, all of those like newspaper like references are actual like events that have happened, and like later on the author does like start like citing them like specifically, so like if you wanted to go find them again, you could like look up like that specific like year or so in newspaper, and you would be able to find whatever event he is like referencing. So a lot of the like events that he talks about did actually happen. I also didn't know that when this was written, it was not like definitively known on whether or not Thomas Jefferson did have like biracial daughters, you know? So technically this predicted the future, quote unquote. That's what like a few reviews said, but you know, whatever. And then a lot of other reviews said that it's like less of a novel and more of like a polemic against slavery, which I do agree. I think it's probably like 60% narrative and like 40% polemic against slavery, which, you know, fair enough. But there are like times in this where you get like multiple pages of just like dialogue. I'm pretty sure there's a point in this, like there are like maybe like 4 or 5 pages just describing a bullfight, which does nothing for the plot. It's just there, I guess. Like narrative wise, it's supposed to like show, I think, how like corrupt New Orleans is, but this feels like very out of place, I guess. Asked for something that felt like more like in place. There's a character in this that has like a 3 or 4 page like talk on how Christianity does not support slavery and how there are like multiple verses in the Bible and like and other stuff that go against slavery. So that was like at least interesting to read about, you know. Even though it does focus more on like less so on the narrative than I was expecting, I still liked it. I still did like the narrative choices that did happen throughout this. Like I was invested in the story, you know, so that is great for that. I did learn a few things while reading that, so, you know, it accomplished what it needed to do. One of the other critiques in this was that it focuses a lot on like light-skinned black women. It says multiple times that they're all basically like white passing, that they're like basically white, you know, quote unquote. And I think that has to do with the fact that the author knew that he had to have his like characters be sympathetic to white people, and that would have to be white or like close to white for white people to care about them. Because like even now in like 2021, we have like complaints about not being able to like relate to characters. So it's not like that far-fetched to think that like someone in the 1850s would need to make his characters as close to white as possible in order to make a point about why slavery is bad. One of the more interesting things that I did learn in this was that if you wanted to like prove that someone was like born free and they were like sold into slavery, because this was written post Fugitive Slave Act, where like people could basically get sent in slavery even if they were like born free, because that whole act was very like corrupt for a variety of reasons. And if you wanted to prove that someone was like born free, you had to have like proof that they were, like, I forget what it said exactly, but you had to have like definitive proof that cannot be debated really. And so even before you went to like quit for that, you had to like cough up $1,000 in their money, so like a fuck ton of cash. And if you like lost your case for that person's freedom, you lost the money. As you can imagine, that basically like stopped a lot of cases from being brought forward, because not only did you need like incredibly specific proof, but you also needed a lot of money. So that was fucked up. Yeah, I think those are my thoughts on this. I really did like it. And while I can see that I don't think this is going to be for everyone, like I think most people would probably give this 3 stars, just because it can get very like preachy at times. It can. But I thought about it in its like historical context. I feel like for the time period, you know, 1853, it being preachy about being anti-slavery makes sense. So I'm fine with it, you know. I don't really want to hold it against it either, because like its whole purpose is to be like anti-slavery, so it makes sense that it would therefore be preachy and be very like heavy on the morals it's trying to like present to you, you know. Those are my thoughts. I liked it. Next up is behind the scenes. This is like fairly short and I'm like really tired, so I'm thinking I'm going to read this and maybe finish it, because I have like 2 days before I have to like post this vlog hopefully, and like 5 more books to read. So I should probably at least try and finish this one so I can like get through everything else. But I'm pretty sure all my other reads are also like fairly shortish, so I'm not that worried. I'll update you either tomorrow or when I like finish this, I guess, you know. So it is the next day because I finished this in one sitting. So my thoughts. I definitely think this is a 4-star read, because I did like it, but I wasn't like in love with it, mostly because the like last few chapters focus in on like an event that I just don't care about, which sounds shitty, but wait. This was like written to basically show that Mary Lincoln, who was Abraham Lincoln's wife, that she was not a shitty person, but she is a shitty person. In the last few chapters basically dedicated Elizabeth Keckley helping out Mary Lincoln, and I just don't like Mary Lincoln because she's a fucking awful human being. I just couldn't be brought to feel bad for her or like care about her, you know? Also that overall this focuses more on like the Lincolns than Elizabeth, because it's focused mostly on like her time at the White House and just like what was going on at the White House while she was there, which was like the Civil War and then the assassination, all that. So yeah, I mean, it is very short, so obviously it isn't going to cover like a long span of time, but I'll go ahead and say that it focuses more on them than on the author herself. And she only spends like the first she literally spends like the first 3 chapters only being a slave. So you don't see a lot of that in this book. So if that's something you're like worried about, here's something that doesn't heavily focus on slavery, or at least like the enslavement of the author herself. I did really like most of this. It's just like the last few chapters, like the drama that was like kind of like the reason for those chapters existing just was not exciting, I guess, because again, like Mary Lincoln was just not a good person, so I can't really like feel bad for her, you know. Though I will say that this gave something interesting, like an interesting look into what Lincoln was like in the White House, just with his like family. It does like paint him in like a different light than we usually expect, not in like a bad light or whatever, just like different, I guess. And I'm not gonna lie, I did tear up when Elizabeth was like talking about the relationship between Abraham and Mary. It was just cute, and I teared up a little bit because, you know, he's gonna die and she's gonna be like alone. And yeah, granted, I felt like less bad by the end of it because, you know, Mary was just a fucking awful person. So yeah, there's my thoughts. And as I'm filming this, it is like 9 o'clock on Saturday, and I want to have this vlog done by like tomorrow at like 5 p.m. So I have less than 24 hours to read like 4 books. So will that happen? Probably not, but we're gonna try our best. There are 2 that I really want to like have on this like vlog. So maybe this will just be the 19th century vlog, and I'll just cut it after I finish the next book. I don't know. I guess I shall know by tomorrow, you know? Because we do have like an actual like assignment to do for like school that I just didn't do today. So yeah, and that's all I have for now. I will update you when I have read something. As if like what's next? Next is the next book in this, and it is Iola Leroy by Frances C. W. Harper, and this was published in 1892. This will be like the last book in the 19th century portion, maybe the whole vlog, depending on how this all goes. So yeah, I will update you whenever something happens. I only have 100 pages left in Iola Leroy, and as of right now, I'm thinking that it is going to be a like 4 stars maybe. I think it depends on how it's gonna like wrap up. Just because like I do like it, but I don't like how the narrative kind of jumps around a little bit, because, or at least like the first half was jumping around in like the timeline. I think we're on like the same path for now. You kind of like know everything yet when you need to know about the past, at least so far anyway. So like the first half of the novel like took place before or like during the Civil War, and then there's a few chapters that took place like before the Civil War. And where I'm at right now, we are in Reconstruction. So don't have a lot to say really besides like that, I guess. There were a few interesting conversations that were like had throughout this. I think this is the first book that I like remember the enslavement of indigenous people was like brought up. Like it was actually something that was like talked about a little bit in Iola Leroy. It was nice to see that discussed, you know. I will say that the first half focuses a little bit more on like Robert Johnson than like Iola, because Iola comes in like around chapter 5-ish. Even she's not like a main POV or anything for at least a few more chapters. So like she's there, but she's not like the main focus, I guess. And you don't find out like why she's enslaved until like a few chapters after she's like introduced into the plot. So yeah, there's my thoughts. I'll update you when I read more, because yeah. So I have now finished Iola Leroy, and I've been thinking about it. Went ahead and read some reviews on GoodReads about it. I'm thinking that is going to be a 3 stars from me. Like there are a lot of like things going on, but the narrative just didn't feel like it was like clicking into place for me, if that makes sense. The chapters felt kind of like disjointed, I guess, and that might just be me, who knows. And then there are parts of this that it's very obvious that the author was like a temperance person, because there are parts where like they go on and on about how alcohol is like the worst thing imaginable, and that there are times where it feels like it's like an after school special that they're giving to you about how like alcohol is bad and you shouldn't drink it. Yeah, so there's that. I did like our main character of Iola. I feel like she was a very interesting character to follow. The cast of characters was very like interesting once you got like used to, and the ending was very like, was it surprisingly like sweet and optimistic for like when this was written, which was 1892. I honestly don't have a lot of like thoughts on this, I guess. It was a very interesting portrayal of the Reconstruction era, because there are a lot of parts of that that are like brought up and talked about. And like most interesting to me was how the characters are kind of like talking about how even though like slavery's over, there's still like a lot of work to be done when it comes to like racial issues, and like just because like it's all over doesn't mean that everything just all perfect now, you know? Like one of the characters is worried about another character because he is working in the South as like a teacher during the Reconstruction, and they're worried about him because he's at risk of like violence, because violence has been like happening towards Black people doing like work like that. So they're worried about him for that reason. I guess maybe like the narrative just didn't appeal to me as much. I don't know. And it isn't like a bad book by any means. I just don't think it was working for me, I guess. There were some like very interesting conversations had throughout the book. I can't really like say it's like bad or anything, because it isn't bad. I just think it's a me thing, you know? So yeah, there's my thoughts. Next is the last book in this, and that is The Marrow of Tradition by Charles W. Chestnut. That was published in 1901. So we're officially in the 20th century now. Woo! So this one is following a black doctor who is facing the realities of segregation and racial terror in the Reconstruction South. It is like noon and I have like 3 books to read so I can like finish this vlog. So I guess we're gonna find out soon. Great. So I have finished The Marrow of Tradition. I think that it might be competing with Clotel for like the best book in this bind up, because I'm thinking it's gonna be like 5 stars actually, because just have like a feeling. I think it's like a 4.5, but I did cry at the end, so I guess it by default gets to be a 5 because I usually rank books that make me cry 5 stars. So we'll say that this book deals with lynching and there is child death in this. Like they're like important to the plot. This book also deals with the fact that like the white allies at the time were like really awful and like they're still extremely racist. Even like the quote unquote good whites say some very like racist shit at times. And at times whenever like they were needed to like stop racial injustice, they were like silent, or they ran, or they just didn't want to like stand up and like do anything, or they went and helped the white supremacists instead. So that was a thing, because we do also see like, I guess like the antagonists and our protagonists, we see like both POVs, and our antagonists are like literal white supremacists. Like they chant white supremacy at one point, so that's there. This is The Marrow of Tradition is also like a fictionalized account of the Wilmington race riot, or like the Wilmington massacre that happened in like the last years of the 19th century. And basically the author wanted to write a fictionalized account about like a more historically accurate account of the events, because at the time when this was written, everything else had been very like biased and we're favoring like the white POV. So I wanted to kind of like write an account of like what actually happened. So that was interesting. Just also talk about how like the law system isn't like fair or balanced at all, and that if a white person does something, they're more likely to like be treated more like fairly than if a black person commits the same crime. It's just a whole, this book deals a lot with like the concept of tradition, which of course the title, you would think so. So yeah, I think those are my thoughts. I'm not sure really. I will go ahead and say that the first like 25% was very slow. I was not sure if I was going to like this, but I think that it picks up when you get like past the first like fourth, you know, and then I think that the characters kind of like fall into place. Speaking of the characters, I did like how like complex most of them were. Like they did have like differing beliefs on certain things, because like I said before, even like the like more progressive white people were still racist at times. And since this little bind up is all done, I do want to like reread all of these individually at some point, maybe for a project in the future, wink wink. But now I have 2 books left, and the one I'm reading after this is The Romance in Marcel by Claude McKay, and this was written I think in like 1928, 32, somewhere around there. And this was not published back then, but it was written back then. And they just recently like published it for the first time, I think like last year or so. The synopsis sounds very confusing, so I'm gonna like read it and then like tell you what it's about, you know. This is a very short, I think like 130 pages is how long it is. So I'm probably gonna read it in like one sitting. I basically have to for this vlog. So here we are. I'll update you when it's all done, because it's so short, like no point in giving you my thoughts halfway through. So yeah. So I finished Romance in Marcel, and it is like 1 a.m. So great. What are my thoughts? This is like a 3 stars for me, I think. The writing was fine, and like I didn't hate my time reading it, but also there wasn't anything like outstanding about it, I guess. I do want to read more from this author because I did like his writing style. I just think that maybe this was too short, if that makes sense. Because even towards the end, I wasn't sure on like how characters were going to like act in the final moments. There are some like interesting things talked about. Like, I should probably tell you what this is about now that I've like read it. It's basically our like main POV is Lafala, who was taken out of the like African bush by missionaries, and then he was like basically raised by white people, I think, and he loved dancing. And while he's in like one of these like port cities, he's basically tricked by a sex worker and she robs him blind, and since he has no money, he decides to get on this boat and stow away. But while he is stowing away, he basically gets frostbite on his legs and he has to have them amputated. And in the ensuing court case, he comes into a lot of money, and then he decides to go back to the port city of Marseille, which is where like all this shit happened. And basically the plot goes from there. We'll say that while this, I wasn't like sure about a lot of the characters' like feelings, the like overall cast of characters is very like an interesting like combination, I guess. There's also a lot of things talked about, like originally, the main thing is like brought up again and again in this book is the fact that the main character wants to go back to Africa, and like all these like movements to like go back to Africa. Basically at one point, one of the characters tells him that since he's black, it is better for him to like not ever go back to Africa, because right now it's like basically crawling with missionaries. So it is just like not safe for him at all to like just go back to Africa right now. The fact that the setting of like a major trading port, I guess. I don't know how to feel right now. Right now it's like a 3 stars. Maybe that will change. I don't know. But I guess this is like the second to last book. I have 1 book left. And that is The Conjure Man Dies by Rudolph Fisher. And this is like one of like maybe the first mystery novels published by a black author, or maybe just a black man. I'm not sure. It got a reprint this year, I think, early on in January. And I got an ARC for review on NetGalley, so I need to go read that. I'm pretty sure the general synopsis is that a conjure man ends up being found dead, and then the main character decides to investigate. While he's investigating, the conjure man is found like walking around again, even though he was previously seen dead, I think. I might be making that part up. But yeah, so I have officially finished the last book for this vlog. It is like 2 days after my last little clip because I was tired and I needed sleep for school. And then Monday night, I had a really bad headache, so I just kind of slept for most of the afternoon after I got back from school. And then today is Tuesday, and I just finished The Conjure Man Dies. Well, I finished it like 30 minutes ago or whatever, but it's done now. And I ended up giving it 5 stars because since it is a mystery novel, a lot of that rating like leans on how well the mystery is and like whether or not I can like guess who the perpetrator is. And I did not guess it. I was invested the whole time, and I liked the cast dynamics, so I don't have anything to like complain about. I will say that the second half, the pacing got a little bit like off, I guess, but wasn't anything like majorly bad. Like I was still invested enough to like finish the book, so that's what matters, you know? The worst part is that because this is like a publisher wanted to like reprint this novel because it was like first published in like 1932, I think. And the author intended to like write more books featuring like the 2 like main leads, but he like died a few years after the book was published, so he just never got around to writing them, which sucks because the dynamics between like the 2 like leads is so fucking good. You're never going to see that dynamic ever again, you know, and that kind of like sucks. I liked them as characters, and I liked like how they interacted, you know, so it just kind of sucks to know that I'm never gonna like see them again. Thankfully, the arc I had, like that edition, has another short story in it that was like a short story featuring those characters again, so that was fun. But still, that made me like even more sad that we're not gonna get anything else from like featuring that, you know, featuring those characters, so that sucks. What I thought the book was about was accurate. Basically, this conjure man dies, and they have to investigate how, like, who killed him, because there are only like so many people in this like room and that were present that could have possibly killed him. First half is more focused on that first night where they like get to the murder scene and they kind of like start investigating. The second half is more like the days leading towards an event that happened, which I won't spoil. But it's kind of like, I guess like because it isn't like the same like pacing of the first half, it feels kind of weird, but that might have just been me, who knows? But yeah, I really liked it. And I'm even more sad because the author only wrote, I think, 1 other novel. And I think he wrote a few short stories, but besides that, he didn't write a lot, so that kind of sucks, you know? And yeah, I think those are my thoughts, really, which isn't a lot, I know, but I guess I don't have a lot to say besides, like, the twists were good. I like the cast, you know, the usual stuff. And yeah, I guess that's it. So this is my, like, final clip for this reading vlog. Basically, this is going to be me kind of, like, discussing, like, recurring, I guess, like, things that I've noticed throughout this reading vlog. Primarily, this will be focusing on stuff from the 19th century and the marrow of tradition, because Claude McKay's book and The Conjure Man Dies, they were written like so far after everything else that they don't really like line up when it comes to like themes, I guess, or at least like themes or stuff that I could like tell or like notice, you know, which also carries me into like one of my points, I guess, is that if I ever do like another like reading Black Classics reading vlog, I'll probably either like focus on like the 19th century or the 20th century fully, you know? I guess they kind of like go together better, you know? Like The Conjure Man Dies is like really is just a piece of genre fiction. Like it really is a mystery novel through and through, which isn't a bad thing. It just makes it so like any like commentary being made is harder for my white ass to like see and tell. So I can't really like analyze that as easily, I guess. I'm sure there are like themes that would tie it to everything else, but like obviously I cannot like tell that. Just for like my final like ranking too, I guess. I think The Conjure Man Dies and The Marrow of Tradition like tied for my like top spot, you know? Then for that, I think it is The Bond Woman's Narrative, Clotel, Behind the Scenes, Romance in Marcel, and then Iola Leroy. So yeah, into like the things that I have noticed. In these books, one of the things I noticed is that the topic, or like the thing as allies, comes up a lot. And what I've noticed through reading all of these is that white people make the worst allies known to mankind. There's not a single time where like they were like good allies in like any way, or like if they were shown to be good, they basically went back and were shown to be shitty later on anyway. So I guess like the moral is don't trust white people when it comes to like serious issues, which, you know what, given how the voting stats turned out in both 2020 and 2016, maybe that is very true. But like seriously, that is an actual like thing that I've noticed throughout these books. Like in the Bond Woman's narrative, there's a white character that is convinced that friends is also anti-slavery, so she basically like gives the main character to her friend in hopes that their friend will be able to like better help Hannah like gather funds so she can like buy her freedom and like go north, you know? Except turns out that the friend is actually racist as hell, so that's not gonna happen. So basically like in this one, the white person was really naive and just didn't actually interrogate her friends on like how they actually felt about issues. She just kind of like took their word at face value, you know? And in Clotel, I think like the principal white characters in this one are like some of the like husbands or like love interests, and they all basically betray our like female leads like all the fucking time. In Clotel, where like the white character might be shit, is like the character that's supposed to be like only about like Christianity being anti-slavery, so that's like the one like redemption. And the same thing happens in Isla Leroy. You know, white men just make shitty love interests too, I guess. And in the Era of Tradition, we see this come up again, especially towards the beginning. We see like white characters like looking like they're going to like stand up and like be like good people, but by the end of things, they basically like run away when stuff gets hard. They don't actually want to like commit to like changing anything, you know? Because like in the Era of Tradition, there are white supremacists, so like that'd be a good moment for like the white people to like, you know, explain like why the white supremacists are wrong, but that just doesn't happen. They basically just run away and give up like immediately. And then behind the scenes, even if this wasn't the author's intention, she portrayed Mary Lincoln as like the worst white ally known to mankind. She put Elizabeth Keckley in like some of the worst situations all alone for like a solid chunk of the book, and we're just like not a good look for her, you know? Something else that I noticed is that basically all of these, I think, besides behind the scenes and maybe Era of Tradition, is that they all tend to have like main characters that are described as basically being like almost white or as having incredibly light skin. And I think that, I'm pretty sure I said this in like another one of my other like earlier clips, but I think that it was made it so like it'd be more like palpable to white people, because I feel like white people wouldn't be as willing to like insert themselves into the shoes of someone that isn't like, you know, almost white, quote unquote. And also I think that there's also something else with that. The authors were trying to show that there isn't that much difference between like white people and black people really. The main difference between like the leads is that they just don't have dark skin. And basically all of these, even though they are black, because they're able to pass as white, they're like given more privileges, and therefore in a lot of cases they are like access to education, and therefore they are usually smarter than the white people around them. Point is that black people aren't like by default inferior to white people. It's just the fact that they aren't given access to these institutions. And kind of like the final thing that I want to like talk about, I guess, is the fact that pretty much every book on this list has a happy ending. Like some of them might have like more tragedy leading up to the happy ending, but they end on a like happy note, or like everything like bad being like either solved or like leading to being solved, I guess, which I think was probably intentional for a lot of these, because the way some of these go, it would be incredibly easy to just have them end on like a sad note, you know? So I think the fact that they all end happily was an intentional choice made by the author. So yeah, I think that's it I have for this discussion, because I do want to edit this and have it like done soonish, so I didn't like prattle on, you know? And yeah, thank you for watching. This reading vlog has been like 3 weeks in the making, because I'm very lazy and I don't like doing things and I hate editing. But here we are at the end of it all, and yeah, if you liked this video, subscribe, like, share, all that, and I will see you next week.